Hi, everybody. Ian Bremmer here, and a quick take to kick off your post-election morning. And Trump is back as president. Should not be a shock to people, certainly was not to us. Anyone looking at elections around the world this year has seen incumbents underperform. We saw that in the United Kingdom. We saw it across Europe in the EU parliamentary elections, as well as in Germany, in France, in everywhere. Austria, you name it, Portugal. In Japan in the last couple of weeks, in India, in South Africa, soon in Canada, as Trudeau will be forced out, and very likely Conservative Party leader Pierre Poilievre will be the next Canadian prime minister. So this was an election that Harris had a significantly uphill battle. That's not usually the case with incumbents, but it is in this cycle. Why? Inflation. And yes, inflation numbers were coming down, but from a high baseline, and anyone in power is seen as responsible for that. You're vice president, you don't get to say it was somebody else. I think the numbers coming down are still from a high baseline. Those prices aren't coming down, you're still paying them. Immigration, and more recently, immigration numbers also illegally coming down. But from a high level, and the illegal immigrants in the United States are still here, and a lot of those that were in red states have also moved or were moved to blue states, and that certainly had an impact. I saw that Trump did better in New York City, my own city, than he had ever before by a large margin. He didn't win, but he got a lot. He was over 30%. And why is that? Well, because a lot of New Yorkers aren't happy about those things, not so different from the rest of the country. And so inflation, immigration, and disinformation. Disinformation because the country is not having a single conversation about policy. It's having two very different political conversations, and you are in your bubble. So there were very, very few votes that were actually up for grabs. It was more a question of who you could get out, who you could turn out. If there's a surprise, it's that women did not turn out in droves despite the abortion issue, despite the fact that there was a woman on the ticket, and despite the fact that Trump has lots of challenges appealing to women historically. But women overall, white women turned out in favor of Trump. He also outperformed overall with African Americans and with Hispanics. And again, this is something that looked pretty clear in earlier polls, but the polls could easily be wrong. And the biggest poll that was wrong, of course, was that Iowa outlier, which wasn't just wrong, it was spectacularly wrong. And I don't know what they got wrong with the methodology, but there you have it. So that is the point. Trump will be coming back. As of right now, as of I'm taping this, Kamala Harris has not yet conceded, but I have literally no doubt in my mind that she will. That is essential. It's important for the country that everyone agrees on who actually won the election. There wasn't a lot of uncertainty around the balloting process itself. I've said that before. The U.S. has a gold standard in terms of the way it conducts its elections. That is the case here. There was a lot more effort at disinformation, most notably all of these bomb threats that were called in, particularly in Georgia, in lower income and black polling neighborhoods that would have hit the Dems, but didn't have an impact overall on the election. We'll see whether or not that was Russia that was behind it. I don't think we have any definitive information there. But again, the level of disinformation externally from Russian, from Chinese, from Iranian sources, a nuisance and irritation, but the problems of the U.S. political system are overwhelmingly domestic problems of the U.S. political system, and that will continue to be the case going forward. Internationally, of course, this is a really big deal because a Trump administration is going to look very different to other countries around the world than a Harris administration would have. I think the biggest question mark out there is for the Europeans. Trump has consistently said that he's going to end this war between Russia and Ukraine in 24 hours. Wouldn't even need to wait until he was president. So, hey, in the next few weeks, it could happen. Zelensky, Ukrainian president, immediately putting out a congratulations to Trump. What a great meeting bilaterally they just had when Zelensky was in the United States. All of that. He has no choice. It's political reality. It's what he needs to do. But when Trump says he wants to end the war, what he means, of course, is that the Ukrainians don't get to keep fighting. The Russians don't get to keep fighting. It means that where the territory lines are right now, that's where they're going to get frozen. And furthermore, that the Trump administration is not going to coordinate with the Europeans. They're going to unilaterally reach out to Zelensky and Putin and try to dictate those terms. Might well succeed. It is possible. Zelensky will be under massively greater pressure. But how the Europeans will play that, both with Ukraine themselves as well as inside NATO, inside the European Union, a very big question, a very big problem, especially as the Europeans, who are economically not performing well, will also be facing higher tariffs from a Trump administration. Will they align with the United States as they have in the last couple of years? Will they support the United States on China, or will they hedge? That's a huge question mark. The Middle East, there's a war going on right now. Netanyahu just got rid of his defense minister, fired him. He is riding high right now, riding high in terms of internal popularity compared to months ago, in terms of how his war efforts are going in killing the leadership of Hamas, both political and military, as well as major gains with Hezbollah. Netanyahu has a lot of support from Trump. They don't love each other, but they are aligned with each other. And Trump has said he would go harder against Israel's adversaries. He criticized Biden for not giving enough support to the Israelis. Will that embolden Netanyahu to try to take on Iranian nuclear facilities? That's a very interesting question. We should watch carefully over the coming weeks. And then, of course, China, which has an economy that is really underperforming. They're going to feel very defensive right now, reaching out to both people like Robert Lighthizer, who has been pushing hard for more tariffs on all Chinese exports to the U.S. as well as through third countries, and also reaching out to Elon Musk, who's traveled to China, who has a lot of business in China, who's clearly very close to Trump, and who the Chinese will hope is someone they can facilitate an easier, softer relationship with. Will Trump support that? What will that mean for the GOP in Congress, given that you're likely to see a GOP wave across both Senate, clear they've taken, as well as likely the House at this point? That's also an interesting question. The biggest challenge here is that the backdrop for the Trump administration incoming is a far, far more dangerous world. Two major wars going on, U.S.-China relations in a more challenging place, though better than they were a year ago. Lots and lots of seriously moving and dangerous pieces geopolitically. And so in that regard, definitely you would expect that Trump is going to get some wins, because he will be the president of the most powerful country in the world, and therefore what he says, countries will listen to more than they would other people when they disagree. But the potential for things to go wrong, if that happens, they'll go much more badly wrong than they did or would have in his first administration. So that's where we are. And there's a lot to talk about. Certainly everything geopolitical is going to be much more uncertain and volatile in the coming months, and I expect to be focused on it closely and chatting with you about it as we go through. That's it for me, and I hope everyone's doing well. Breathe. Very important for people to breathe, and I'll talk to you all real soon.